What's up YouTube fragrance family and friends, Tommy with Studio Sense here. So the past two videos I've basically focused on the top 10 of my favorite new releases for men 2021. I'll link that above me here in case you didn't get a chance to see that. And the second video was best in class for new releases, kind of categorized fragrances for what their best quality or feature was, and I'll link that above me as well in case you didn't get a chance to see that. Since we're so close to ending the year and closing out 2021 in terms of new releases, I'm going to kind of go ahead and encapsulate my least favorite releases of 2021. So when we come back, we're going to talk about 8 different fragrances, why I think they weren't that stellar of releases. That and more is coming up, so stay tuned. Welcome back everyone, and welcome to my least favorite releases of 2021 in terms of new fragrance for men. So we're going to focus a little bit on Alfred Dunhill. Now you're probably very familiar with the Icon line of fragrances. You've got Icon, Icon Absolute, you've got Icon Racing. Alfred Dunhill released 2 additional editions in the Icon Racing line. There was the Icon Racing Red edition and Icon Racing Blue edition. So let's take a quick look at these. I actually like the original Icon Racing so much better, and so I had some expectation that these were going to be pretty good fragrance releases for Alfred Dunhill. Taking a look at Icon Racing Red, it's a nice looking bottle. They're very heavy. The best thing about these fragrances is the presentation. So basically any fragrance that is red or released in the red genre of fragrances has some kind of pimento or habanero or cinnamon or red thyme or some kind of red fragrant note in the fragrance, and that's just basically what they've done here. They've taken kind of an all-around DNA and made it even more generic in my estimation. There's a little bit of pepper, there's a little bit of sweetness, there's a little bit of the Icon Racing DNA in the red edition, but really not enough to promote it as a fragrance that you would want to wear on a daily basis. So less than stellar release in my estimation. Well, what about Icon Racing Blue? Something special come out of this? After all, the blue genre of fragrance is pretty easy to mimic. You can't go wrong there, right? Well, not necessarily. They went ahead and put bergamot, lime, and ambroxan in the open of this fragrance, hoping that as soon as you smell it, you're going to think, oh, a new modern blue fragrance. And basically what you're left with is a relatively pleasant blue fragrance, but there's nothing to make it unique, nothing to make it different, nothing to make it exciting at all. It's just a lightly modern, kind of ambroxan-y, but not very powerful even, not very powerfully projecting, and it doesn't really have a great scent DNA. Again, in the center, if you smell it long enough, you get a little bit of that lightly Invictus-like DNA, which is really what Icon Racing was kind of mimicking. It's Alfred Dunhill's version of Invictus, basically. It's kind of sad to see because Alfred Dunhill is they've released some really good fragrances in the past, but these aren't stellar releases, and so if you already have Icon Racing, you have the best of the racing line. Unless you're just a completionist and you want to collect all of them just because of the cool racing lines inside the presentation, that would be the only reason that I can see to spend more than $30 on each one of these. Our next new release that I think is less than stellar, really not that great. And again, just to be completely clear, it's not that any of these fragrance releases are terrible or anything. It's just that there's nothing really about them that sets them apart, makes them unique or different, or even really that good. So this one, however, I have to say is pretty bad in my estimation as a new release, and it's actually the OG flagship fragrance for Hugo Boss. It is Hugo Man. They've redesigned it. Basically, they made the font larger. They've kept the GIOD canteen look about the presentation, and they just made the font larger on the front. So that's how you can tell the difference between the old Hugo Boss flagship fragrance and then the new. The new is relatively simple. You got a little bit of green apple, lavender, pine, some woody notes, a little bit of fir balsam in there, but that's about it. It is a very, very generic kind of aftershave smelling fragrance. There's a little bit of that original apple in there, but it's just quite synthetic and really not at all my favorite. Boss number 6 is still the best older fragrance for Hugo Boss. I think they did a good job in redoing that kind of formula with Boss Bottled, the Eau de Parfum version, but this, no. Definitely wouldn't spend any money whatsoever. I think I got this for 25 bucks as a brand new release when it was on special. So Hugo Boss, Hugo Man, not a good new release. Our next new release that I was a little bit disappointed in because I have such expectations for this design house, and it is Kenzo, and their release was Kenzo Eau de Toilette Intense. So got some fig wood in there, there's some lighter notes, there's some, I think, sea breeze and aquatic, kind of a aroma chemical that's aquatic. It's a decently modern, bright, lightly green, lightly aquatic smelling fragrance. It's a pleasant smelling fragrance. It just doesn't deserve the name Intense, number one, because once you spray it on an hour later, 2 hours later, it's really hard to catch. And it doesn't really have, like most Kenzo fragrances have this signature that you can recognize immediately. Definitely not one of them. This would be easy to get confused with maybe like Lacoste Match Point because it's got that green vibe about it, that just fresh soapy green vibe about it. So again, it's not a bad fragrance, just as a new release. I was expecting a bit more from Kenzo. Another new release that I was expecting a bit more of, but things can kind of go sour when they go the direction of unisex, because unisex isn't that easy to do successfully, at least splitting it down the middle, is from Zadig and Voltaire. It is This Is Us. I really do like that bottle. It's like a rock broken in half, and you put the two halves together and they form a whole. Really nice presentation. They stuck with that. In fact, This Is Love, which is a really nice summer release, a very sandalwood, creamy vanilla sandalwood release by Zadig and Voltaire, is one of my favorite summer releases. So I had some expectation that This Is Us would be a good unisex fragrance. And at first I kind of liked it. If you watch my video, I said some positive things about it, but I've since worn it more, and I'm of the opinion that it smells very similar to literally smells like a feminine antiperspirant or feminine deodorant, something like that. It's not very appealing, in other words. And as a unisex fragrance, I think it's a bit more feminine than it is masculine. And it's just not a very good representation of the This Is Him DNA. So the OG fragrance was This Is Him, then you had This Is Love, and now This Is Us. So stick with the first two, don't get this one. Unless you like the smell of, yeah, I'm holding it backwards. Unless you like the smell of feminine underarm products, and then there you go for it. A couple of disappointments occurred down the pike from Montblanc this year. Don't know what happened to them. The very first one came in the form of a fragrance that we were all expecting to be really great, and that is Montblanc Explorer Ultra Blue. Ultra Blue ended up being a slightly generic, minty, just average fragrance. Now the thing about that is, the problem with that is the original Explorer is such a great fragrance. Even though it's mimicking Aventus, it is an Aventus clone, kind of an inspired by fragrance, it's still a great standalone scent and fragrance and quality. And while the quality is decent in this, it's definitely nothing new. It's just very generic smelling. One of the most generic smelling fragrance releases this year. And that's not to say it's bad. I'm just saying it has nothing about it that is different. In fact, Jean Varvatos XX Indigo is a much better blue fragrance than is this Ultra Blue. So I also think it's not correctly named. There's nothing ultra about the fragrance. The second Montblanc release that was less than stellar and I was quite disappointed by is Montblanc Individuel Tonic. This was released not that long ago, ended up being just kind of an average, somewhat aftershave-like, cheap-smelling tonic fragrance. And of course, tonic is supposed to be like a light spritz. I get it, and it's green, it's a light green kind of smell and tonal quality. In fact, this has more in common with Kenzo Eau de Toilette Intense than it does with the original Individuel. You can't smell any of the original DNA in Individuel Tonic, so don't expect that if you purchase this at all. So these were two fragrances by Montblanc that were not that great, so hopefully their next release is gonna re-imbue our faith in Montblanc as a great design house, because they put out some really good stuff. The last fragrance that we're going to take a look at that I was disappointed by, that I had high hopes for. Probably gonna raise some eyebrows, and I get that, I understand. A lot of people have put a lot of faith in Hermes, which is the design house that we're focusing on with this fragrance. It is H24. Now, I've not actually done a full review of this, so to be fair, I want to put that out there. I've only done a first impression. However, I've actually sprayed it on quite a few times. I actually really like the open of H24. The open is very pleasant. It's very fresh, it's very warm, it's very inviting. In the background, you get that sclerine, if I'm saying that right, that aroma chemical, freshly laundered clothing that is being pressed with an iron. And I get that, and there's something pleasant about that. I will admit, there is something pleasant about the whole idea of H24, and it's not an unpleasant fragrance, just like all of these. None of these are really unpleasant to smell. It just feels like an unfinished product to me. It feels like a good start, it feels like a great start to a fragrance, but it doesn't feel finished, because for a fragrance to completely rely on the smell of wet clothing and a hot iron, and the steam, the steam that's emitted when a hot iron touches cool clothing, like a crisp Stafford shirt. While that's a good idea, there just needs to be more. You can't really rely on that wholly. As a signature scent, this just doesn't work for me. I don't see, there's nowhere to go for that, I just can't imagine standing by someone wearing this and them turning to me and saying, man, you smell like a freshly pressed shirt. Okay, is that even a compliment? I don't know. It's somewhere in the middle distance for me. This one just feels like an unfinished or incomplete idea. A lot of people like H24, and I understand that. I still have great respect for the House of Hermes. Now, I know there's a lot more fragrances out there that I could have covered that may have been a little bit less than stellar, or a lot of people may have been disappointed by. A couple of fragrances that I was actually impressed by, and still am impressed by, is the Eau de Parfum version of Boss Bottled United. I think this is a really fresh version of United, and believe it or not, this particular fragrance I didn't like at first because I thought it was like Lemony Pledge, but it's been growing on me. It is D Squared Wood 2. It is a unisex fragrance, but there's something about it when it dries down. It's just a really nice, heavy, lemony musk. Just a very musky lemon smell that is just really fresh. And I do like that about it. And there's, of course, woods in the background because that's the idea, is a woody fragrance. But I'm interested in knowing from you guys what new fragrances that you were expecting something from and it delivered less than what you wanted it to deliver, or didn't smell exactly the way that you wanted it to smell. Let me know what those are in the comments below. Guys, thanks so much for stopping by and checking out today's video, and as always, thank you so much for your support on my channel. I'm Tommy with Studio Sense, and I'll see you tomorrow.